So this week's parasha, Parshas Terumah, we have the instructions for the building of the Mishkan. Someone asked, what ethical dilemmas are there in Parshas Terumah? But actually, to the modern thinker, this is a bit of a dilemma. Because basically what we're saying in this parsha, and it's something which we discuss in our prayers as well, is that we feel like we're missing something very basic. We're missing an essential part of our observance. Almost as if we would be saying that the Judaism we have today, the way the Torah that we are observing today, is a plan B. Because if we were really living as Jews the way that we're supposed to be living, we're all supposed to be in Eretz Yisrael. There's supposed to be a holy temple. There's supposed to be a king and a high priest and a Sanhedrin and all the other parts of the Torah that we don't fulfill today. As a matter of fact, according to one count, there's different opinions as to. First of all, there's a question as to which the 613 mitzvahs are, different counts. But of those 613, there's a question as to how to count which would apply today. And according to one opinion, we only keep, or are only able to keep, 270 out of 613. 270 out of 613 is a very small number. If anyone can fulfill 270, you're doing pretty good. But still, in terms of the big picture, most of the commandments we're unable to fulfill because we are missing a Beis HaMikdash. However, how would our world see? How would our world understand if we were to build a temple and sacrifice on this temple thousands of animals every year, of which very little is eaten? Most of it is burnt. You have this one goat which is taken on Yom Kippur to a very tall mountain and thrown off the mountain. CNN would have a field day with that one. PETA, yeah.
The Shemronim do it. The what?
They're too small, though. They're too small, and they're considered a little, I want to use the word bizarre.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
It's bizarre.
So that people don't take them seriously. But if the Jewish people as a whole would have the temple, we would seem a little strange based on the way that modern society understands it. And because of that, there are certain factions within the Jewish people who deny the whole concept of the temple and its service as being essential to Judaism. There are even some people who would refer to themselves as Orthodox Jews, who say, I've heard them say, well, we don't really need the temple service. We've replaced it with prayer, as we say, Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasadim, the three pillars, Torah, service, and acts of kindness. And we say that originally service meant the service in the Holy Temple, but since then we've, matured, which is the way people want to say, evolved, matured, and now we can sort of do it without all the actions, and they'll cite a Rambam for you. Because the Rambam writes that really there was no need for sacrifices. God doesn't need you to bring an animal and offer it up. But the Rambam writes, because in those days, the pagans worshipped these idols of animals or inanimate objects or whatever it was, which do need sacrifices, and the Jewish people were demanding that they want to worship their God in the way that the other nations want. They had this inclinational desire, even if they didn't actually verbalize this desire, but God saw that that's what they needed, and therefore He gave them this concession and allowed them to bring sacrifices. That's what the Rambam writes in Moreh Nevuchim. And the Ramban, in his introduction to Parshas Vayikra, right at the beginning of the Parsha, takes the Rambam to town on this and says, we find that there were sacrifices which were brought in the Torah by the great people of the world before there was ever such an issue, such as Adam and Cain and Hevel and Avraham. They all brought sacrifices to God before there was ever this issue of a nation that's been in Egypt and become accustomed to pagan worship. And we're going to...
They were still living in a pagan world. They weren't in Egypt in the pagan
Well,
world, but the rest of the world.
Well, Adam and Cain and Hevel, at least the first generation. But we're saying that it would have been okay. Abraham threw away all the idol worship. He had already thrown all that away. If sacrifices were a bad thing, then God should have said, you can get rid of the sacrifices too. We're assuming that he was ready to go do whatever it takes. But it seems that it was still an encouraged thing. Anyway, that's the Ramban's problem with the Rambam. And maybe we'll come back to that particular point later on when we talk about this issue of trying to understand mitzvahs from this kind of perspective, which is a big issue. Now, I'm just going to mention it in brief now because that's not really the topic of our conversation. But as we know, the Rambam wrote Moreh Nevuchim, which translates as the Guide to the Perplexed. And in it, he says what we would call today controversial, but in those days were considered very radical ideas, such as the idea we just mentioned, that the whole purpose of the sacrifices was a concession to the, what's the right word, to the paganistic influenced psyche of the Jew of the time. And that's a problem. It's a problem to suggest that the reason for mitzvahs were God's, is that it actually was not something that Hashem wanted, but just gave it, and all of Sefer Vayikra is just one big giant concession on the part of God. It's very hard to understand. And the question is, what was the Rambam thinking? So as we've mentioned many times, the Rambam is a lot more careful and exacting than we give him credit for. And specifically, what we talk about is the naming of his book as the Guide to the Perplexed. See, I would never name a book anything for the perplexed, because that means anyone who's buying it would have to concede that they are perplexed. And I know today we have the For Dummies books, but that's because everyone knows that anything for dummies is actually not for dummies. It just means that it's going to spell it out for you. Although in most For Dummies books, let's say, even if the topic of, if it's Microsoft for Dummies, it will start, this is your computer. In the front there is a power button. It probably has the following symbol on it. Please make sure your computer is plugged into the wall and that you've paid your electric bill. It will do that in order to be humorous and pretend that it's for dummies, but they're really complicated books. But for the Rambam to name his book The Guide to the Perplexed, he actually is not trying to be funny. It's a guide to the perplexed, because he lived in a society of people who were perplexed. He lived in a society of Muslim influence, where the Muslims had their philosophies, and those philosophies were considered by the secular world of the time to be the most advanced philosophies in the world. Ibn Rashid and all the other Averroes and Abu Sina, these were of the golden age of Arabic philosophy, and they had proven and developed an Aristotelian system for Islam. And this is a very big deal, because Aristotle was for some reason considered to be almost divine. He was considered to be the greatest philosopher of all time. And if Aristotle said it, it must be so. He was the original Google. So if Aristotle said it must be true, and we have to adjust everything we say to Aristotle, which is very strange, because by the time we're in our society, by our time, you have to struggle to find anything that Aristotle said that anyone still agrees with. But in those days, Aristotle was it, and the Muslim world had shown that their system was Aristotelian, thereby proving their system to be the authentic system. The Rambam needed to defend Judaism and show that Judaism can fit into an Aristotelian system, And not only, which is amazing of the Rambam, not only did he show that Judaism fits within the Aristotelian system, he showed how the Muslim philosophers had twisted things to try to squeeze Islam into an Aristotelian system, but it actually contradicts the Aristotelian system, and that only Judaism, more than any other religion, is actually Aristotelian. And part of an Aristotelian system is that sacrifices should be brought for a reason such as this, not because God needs sacrifices, but as a concession to the psyche of man, of the Jewish people. So the Rambam is writing this, but the Rambam does not actually believe that the reason for sacrifices is because of a concession to the Jewish people. How do I know that? Because you look in most philosophy books that discuss the Rambam. Most philosophy books only read one book of the Rambam, that's the Guide to the Perplexed. But the Rambam wrote many other books. Specifically, the book called Mishnah Torah. In Mishnah Torah, that's where he writes all the laws. Mishnah Torah was written for the unperplexed. The Mishnah Torah was written for the learned. And there the Rambam writes, please don't try to find reasons for sacrifices. We bring sacrifices because God said so, and for no other reason. And the Rambam writes that. And so you say, well, one second, didn't you give this whole weird reason in the Guide to the Perplexed? The answer is, yeah, that's for the perplexed. He wrote that because Jews who are struggling with their Judaism, you have to give them an explanation that they can handle. And this is something which brings us back to where we're going, and that's part of the dilemma that we're going to deal with, is how much do we have to adjust the Torah and its laws to fit into the psyche of the modern Jew in order to explain things? Do I say, if someone says, what's with this whole, I read the Bible, there's so many animals being killed in the Bible, these poor sheep and goats, like what did they do to deserve all this suffering being brought down on them? That's what the modern secular person would believe. How do I respond to them? Do I say, well, you might be right, but God said so? Or do I try to give them some either real or maybe semi-real or some convoluted explanation to try to defend myself? So I'll ask you, before we get into this, how would you defend the Jews? Because Emir Hashem, maybe tomorrow, maybe the day after, a sound of a shofar will be heard, and all the Jewish people will get on government-sponsored El Al flights, with all of your stuff, maybe your house as well. Some people will somehow manage that. There's a put this on the recording, but it's fine.
We'll be on Frontier because nobody could afford the baggage charges.
Right, to pay per seat. So there's a Jew somewhere in the world, we won't even name the city, who spent a lot of money, beautiful, beautiful house, and spent a lot of money putting in a shul in his basement. Way too much money, because you got to do coding and zoning and all this kind of stuff. Cost him a lot of money. And there were like 3 or 4 other shuls on the block. And it was kind of strange that he would do. So people used to say that there's a medrash that says that when Mashiach will come, all the Jews are going to get into the shuls, and the shuls are going to lift themselves up and land in Eretz Yisrael, and they'll be replanted. So this guy doesn't want to lose his house. So it's a worthy investment. You put a shul in your basement, and then when all the shuls go to Eretz Yisrael, he'll be able to keep his house. Fantastic investment. Also,
maybe just the basement will go.
Right.
Separate.
There's actually this other story which is told about there's a shul that didn't have, they still had an earthen floor. So when the Gabbai got up to make an appeal, he said, we want to lay tiles down for the floor. He said, Rabbosai, you got to hear this. When Mashiach is going to come, everyone's going to come into the shuls, and all the shuls are going to go to Eretz Yisrael, and we're all going to get in the shul, and the shul is going to lift itself up, and we're going to remain here because there's no floor for the shul. But this is going to happen. Hopefully soon. We say, V'isha Yisrael usfilasam mehera bi'avos kabel b'ratzo. We say in our davening, Hashem, please take us back and let us rebuild the temple and bring sacrifices What position are you going to take to explain why every day we're sacrificing? Doesn't it feel kind of pagan? Doesn't it feel ancient and archaic?
Who said that we're going to have sacrifices? One of the things at the time of Mashiach, we're not going to have an evil combination anymore. Therefore, no more sacrifices.
That'll be later. That's in a later stage. But at the earlier stage, it's just going to be, we're going to regain the Temple Mount. We're going to find the red cow. I think they found the red cow already. Everyone's going to be purified. And we're going to, right, have you all seen this? This is great. You can probably find it on YouTube, I assume.
The red cow.
Yeah, the red cow. Right? We've got all the materials together. We certainly have enough money amongst the Jewish people to afford the building of the temple. We just got to make sure that it's done halachically and not have every person who wears sandals most of the day believe that somehow they're the high priest. We're going to have to deal with that. But assuming we get through all these obstacles, how would you defend the temple and its sacrifices today?
Would we need to at that point? I mean, if the temple's actually being built, doesn't that mean that Mashiach has come and that the world kind of knows?
Yeah, but
what the score
that doesn't
is?
mean that all of a sudden people are going to shift into the ancient system. People are still going to require an explanation.
What I would say is, this is how I interpret it to myself, is that we are supposed to envision ourselves as being that animal, and that's doing a kapara for us. We should be killed for the sin that we did, but God has made it so that the animal can take the punishment.
You think that will be? That's in the Ramban's explanation, which at some point I plan on getting to, but I don't think we will today. But is that going to work? Do you think to modern society?
Nothing's going to work.
That's my question. Is it true that nothing's going to work? What could we say? What can we explain? Let's not even go to the non-Jew, but to the secular or less religious Jew. How do we sell them on this, assuming that we want to? How would we? How could we?
I don't think there is anything you could say to that.
That's why Mashiach is there.
That's right.
Well, no, he's going to be the great teacher, but we've got to, in order for us to understand, because when we say Dama Shetashiv La'Apikoris, which means everyone has to know how to respond to a heretic, we say the heretic is not the heretic outside of us, but there's a little heretic inside of each of us that we're wondering, what do I need this for? It seems kind of good to me. Why do I need sacrifices?
Well, I think to someone who's not a vegetarian or a vegan, you could very easily say, well, you have animals killed for you as well. You wear leather shoes. Some people have fur coats. You eat the meat, and so it's on the same level.
But God doesn't need this.
But I think it's harder to talk about that to someone who's actually a vegan or a vegetarian.
I'll give you that. Yeah, you're definitely gonna have a hard time with pita. But even to the I'm not giving God anything. God doesn't need this. So then what does it accomplish? And what's the point? It just seems like that stuff that people did 2,000 years ago, that the world finally got out of doing, and now you guys have gone back to it.
Well, God tells us to do it. So if you believe that the Torah is from God and you believe in God, then you don't really, if the opportunity is there to do it, you don't really have an option not to. But so if the person doesn't believe in God, but they'd have to recognize the reasoning behind, if you believe in God and you believe that the Torah is from God, this is something that you need to do.
I give that, and the God said so approach certainly will work for someone who believes in God, but I still need to explain on some level, or do I, why did God say so? What does God want with these sacrifices? Because on some days, there are hundreds of sacrifices being brought. On Erev Pesach, we're talking millions in a day.
The word korban means to come close, or it has to do with the same idea, and I think the idea is that if people really want, maybe if somebody doesn't believe at all in God, I don't have an answer for them, but if there's at least a spark, a bit of belief that remains, the notion of getting closer to God is something we aren't able to do now because of all of the things that obscure and interrupt our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And so when this time comes, there won't, presumably that those things won't have the same level of effect, and we won't be screened off from the desire to become close to Hashem. And so that, I mean, our entire society is built on the idea that anything that happened.
But how are we
past-
bringing this to the Beis Hamikdash and to the sacrifices? I know you're relating it at the word korban, but
I'm trying to say that people, that when that time comes, and there's at least some recognition of it, then people's wish to become closer to Hashem will emerge as a stronger force. And so the argument that I mean,
yeah, but we're saying we don't need the korban for that. It should be about feelings of the heart, and like we say, like this week's parsha, people who donate their hearts, people should worship. You should sacrifice yourself on the altar of whatever. Every time you hold back from doing a sin, you are slaughtering your evil inclination. This is how we've metaphorically brought korbanos for the last 2,000 years, and now we're falling back on this old, again, seemingly pagan ritual.
well, I mean, and maybe you're going to say the same thing, but this whole business of talking about them, reading about the korbanot in Musaf and so on, that's only because we can't do it. But if we are able to do it, it's much better to do the real thing.
Why?
Than to just talk.
Why is it better to do the real thing?
Because the Naasev and Nishma, according to I'm sorry, I'm blanking on this. One of the people who was martyred during the Holocaust, we should understand Naasev and Ishma to mean that we will understand by doing it, and unless you actually can do the things, you don't really understand them.
Right, but my question is: Are you not already coming close when you daven? If you're standing before God and you bring yourself close to God, what more is going to be accomplished by this? I think you say Naasev and Ishma, but davening is also Naasev and Ishma. So, I mean,
but that davening, that part of the davening is only because we can't bring the korbanot.
yeah, we know that, and that's why we're going to go back to the korbanos. But the question is why? I think we're sort of running in a circle. Why do we need that? We can't say we need it because that's what we need to do. What more is going to be accomplished?
Because that's the actual. I'm saying it's the actual thing, and not the substitute that we now have in davening.
Yeah, but it's not about the korban. You're saying it's about coming close. So cut out the middleman and just go close. I'm just arguing for the sake of presenting the other side, but that's the sort of the question that we're going to have to respond to, because modern thinkers think that you don't need these actions. You don't need, that's the whole be a good person, and that's all you need. Why do I need to do all these funny rituals?
Even, let's say I do something stupid, and I know my wife is extremely upset at me. So what I do a physical act. I go ahead out of my budget and I sacrifice tons of money on a piece of jewelry or vacation, the whole thing, to basically say, honey, I'm sorry, please forgive me, and I will get closer to you. And maybe at the end of the day, she enjoyed the jewelry, but she's not going to forgive or forget about what I did wrong. And the same thing is here. We wanted to do something physical to at least give ourselves some sort of a pseudo satisfaction or make believe that by doing this act, I'm getting closer to Hashem,
Well,
and I get
I hear, but these explanations work once you already know the law. The modern thinker, and that's who we're addressing here, is not going to accept that God needs chocolates and flowers.
I say, if, you know what? I said,
why we
that's the
give
same
him
thing.
sacrifice.
Why he does it for his wife?
Because his wife needs chocolates and flowers.
No,
But
he
God,
needed to give the wife chocolate flowers. He just said it didn't work.
right,
He needed to give the chocolate and flowers.
right,
The wife didn't need the chocolate and flowers.
right. But she might not need. So that's the
She
question.
did not forget what he did just because.
Right, and you
And so
even
the
you even
sacrifice
said
is
it
the
wasn't
same.
even the chocolate and the flowers. It was the sentiment. It was the fact that you felt responsible enough that you had to go do something. So bring the prayers. As long as your prayers are meaningful, God shouldn't need. Yes.
So you were asking the question in the sense of people are going to say, why are you going back to such a pagan type of ritual? And, you know, pagans wear clothes and pagans breathe air and pagans swim in the swimming pool and pagans do all the normal things. Just because a pagan does something doesn't make it pagan. And, I mean, and so that assumption right away that it's a pagan ritual is wrong altogether.
How are you going to prove that? How are you going to convince me of that? Because I agree with you. I don't think sacrifice is a pagan, but the world certainly sees it that way. The world considers it that we as a human species have advanced beyond the need for this.
Okay, so would those same people, I would bring up actual pagan groups that still exist. Do they nudge the Wiccans? Why are you doing what you are doing and give them a problem? Do they?
I think on some level they do. They consider them to be strange people who they are not part of society. They would consider them to be cults. And a part of the definition of a cult is to do something which is strange and something that doesn't fit into modern man's vision of what the perfect human is.
But a lot of that is also very, and the worshiping of the female goddesses and all the rest of this. All of this is very prevalent among certain parts of our society, more so than people.
Right, because there's.
It's incredibly.
Yes. Sometimes it comes into fashion amongst the high society to start doing, bluegrass kind of stuff. Yeah.
Bluegrass? That's a kind of music.
Wrong word.
Well, I mean, as opposed to yes. Okay. Let's use a different kind of example. But something. What we mean here is what you wouldn't expect those kind of people to be into, and that's really what it is. It's you having something which no one would apply to you. So people will take on strange kinds of things in order to make themselves cool by being into something that they... getting into Kabbalah.
I mean, we have kind of this problem already today when you have certain countries in Europe, or one or two countries at any rate, that were trying to outlaw shrita,
and circumcision, right? The bris milah.
And so we have this kind of issue today. And I don't know why we should be so concerned about explaining ourselves to other people.
Well, we're talking about to fellow Jews. We want our fellow, and it is our job. It's our job to try to understand something well enough that we can explain it, that we can discuss it with people in a way where we can give it over where they can easily and readily and willingly accept it.
I'm ready for the explanation.
Because to me, like taking on something you don't understand, that's keeping kosher. That you could live with. But to me, to be in a system where they're doing korbanos, like, I feel that would just turn me off totally.
It would be difficult. It
Really?
would be very difficult.
Okay.
I wouldn't
All right.
get close.
All right.
And it doesn't seem.
If we went back to this good time religion, would we then close the shuls and people wouldn't daven anymore and just deal with the...
So even when there was a Beis Hamikdash, there was still davening. Because the davening was created in our form at the beginning of the Second Temple era. So you had about 400 years where people in the temple were bringing sacrifices and people in shul were davening. The Gemara actually deals with when did the Kohanim daven, and they had to say different prayers. And many of the blessings that we have were different blessings because it didn't say in their blessings, please bring us back to the Holy Temple. What it said was, please accept the sacrifices which are currently being brought. Okay, so we come to the Sefer HaChinuch. The Sefer HaChinuch is an important sefer that everyone should be somewhat familiar with. On some level, it's available in translation. The Sefer HaChinuch was written sometime in the 13th century by an unknown author who was, without question, one of the greatest medieval commentators that we've had, and we're not sure exactly who it was. In those days, it was common that great authors would write their books without identifying themselves, although they're always identified in code or in secret, because there's some tradition that your name has to at least be alluded to. And so now the problem is to try to find in this very large book where he alluded to his identity. So there are some clues in different places, and that's where historians have a lot of fun trying to figure out who he is. But he wrote a sefer going through the 613 commandments, describing each of the commandments to his son. The whole thing is written as a book to his son, and it was meant for his son to read on Shabbos afternoon to learn about the 613 mitzvahs, and that's why it's in the order of the parsha. Anyway, so he says, and this is on page 1 in the handout, I'm not going to read it inside because we don't have that much time, so I'm just going to run through it in the English. If you want to follow along in the Hebrew or just listen outside, I don't actually have the English, so excuse the loose translation. Know, my son, that the only thing that Hashem gets from us fulfilling His commandments is the opportunity to give us and to do good for us. All 613 commandments, their only purpose is to enable God to reward us. God found 613 different ways for us to be able to deserve reward. Now, if that's all there is, then why didn't God make it more simple? God should have said, if you jump up and down 3 times every hour, on the hour, then you'll get the world to come. And then it's really simple. Each of us just jumps up and down 3 times on the hour, and we'll get the world to come.
It's a meaningless action.
Right, meaningless. So there's got to be meaning to all the commandments. But the meaning will never be because God needs or wants that specific action. So I think we're all understanding. So he says, when we do the commandments, when a person fulfills the commandments, at that point he is deserving or ready or fitting to receive this good, then God will give them the good. But he says that good, the way that you become deserving of good, is to become a good person and to do good things. And when you do good things, which is interesting, because you're doing good things when you do what God tells you to do, but God tells you to do things which are good things only. So which came first? Are these things good things first, and then God tells you to do them, and then you're deserving the good? Or are they only good because God commanded that you should do that good? Therefore, the way of the Torah is that when a person will be good, and you fulfill the commandments, then he deserves to receive the good, and otherwise he doesn't. I'm going straight to the bottom of page 1. Then there are some people who say, well, if that's the case, I would like to help God. I will declare to God, I am ready and willing, give me your good. And their whole service is only so that they can receive the good from God. He says, such people merit life and will receive that good. They will get their portion in the world to come. But they don't have the real purpose for the fulfillment of the Torah. On page 2, there are those people who are smart enough and mature enough to understand and to recognize that by the fulfillment of these commandments, they fulfill the will of God and that's all that they desire. Say this. God gives us the mitzvahs. The amazing idea that the Sefer HaChinuch is telling us. God gives us the commandments because He wants us to be better people so that He can reward us. And we should not care about that reward, but we should only do that because we don't want the reward, we want to do what God wants. Even though what God wants is to give us the reward. So we have a very strange relationship where God wants to do for us, and we don't care whether He actually does for us. All we want is to do for Him. And if that doing for Him is to allow Him to reward us because that's the will of God, then that's why we're doing it. But not because we want the reward. We just want to fulfill the will of God. And that is such a difficult level to reach that he says that's the level of Avraham Avinu and Yitzchak Avinu and Yaakov Avinu and many of their descendants. But that's not the typical way. Most people serve Hashem because they want to receive the reward and they don't want to receive the punishment. That's his introduction. So he says, and here I'm going to read inside on page 2. Umayata and now. If that's the way we understand the concept of the commandments, we have to say, Ki binyan bayis l'shem yizbarach, that the building of a house for God's name, for His sake, v'asosenu batfilos v'karbanos elav, and the bringing of prayers and sacrifices to God, Hakol lahachin halavavos la'avodaso yis'aleh, is all to make our hearts more ready to serve Him. And I think some people were starting to go here, but let's see where he takes this. Basically, he's saying that once you understand that there are no commandments that are for God, they're all in order to make us better people. So your question is, how does bringing a sacrifice make you a better person? Lomi yoso tzarech lasheves b'nei nashim v'lavo b'tzel korosam. He says, what do you think? You think God needs to dwell amongst man? If you build him a tower of cedar trees, heaven and all the universe cannot contain God. God holds up the universe. So do you understand that you've got an entire universe of which the Milky Way doesn't even form a speck? And you've got the planet Earth, which in the Milky Way doesn't form a speck. And you've got a little building on a Temple Mount, which doesn't even form a speck. And that's the house you're building for God to dwell in? How do you even understand it that way? God is holding up the universe. Go back 3 specks backwards, and it's God to whom all the universe is not even a speck. There's actually more space between God and the universe than there is between any of these specks and each other. Do you think God needs a house? God did this for us, for our sake. This is what Dr. Appleson was starting to say before, was that our body only becomes a better body if we do physical actions. The more physical actions we do, and the more often we do it, our minds are purified and cleansed. And Hashem wants that we should have good. And here we come to the point. Therefore God said, make a place that is perfectly clean and reverent and holy and untouchable. Make some place that you can look at, which to you is so holy that if you would walk in there, you would die. Because that is the case. Right now, I have no respect for anything, because there's no place that I can't go. I, as a human being, all men are created equal. I can go wherever I would like to go. I can enter the White House. I can enter Buckingham Palace. Obviously, there's rules. But you see, the White House has a little bit of respect, because try climbing those gates. Try to walk away from your tour and give yourself your own guided tour straight to Guantanamo Bay. That's still open? Yeah. So
But you won't go to
No,
Guantanamo for that.
No. But you'll end up going somewhere.
Yeah.
And you know what that does? When I have a place that I give special status, it changes me. It changes the way I perceive things. It changes the way I look at it. When I think of a physical place as being pure and holy, when I enter that space, I actually myself become pure and holy. My mind is cleansed. And it's such a strange thing, because I can sit there and try to meditate and cleanse my mind, but I know that I am so impure. I've done so many impure things. I've done so many terrible things in my life. But somehow, when I enter into this holy place, I feel spiritually elevated. I'll prove it to you. Because at least for the first 10 minutes, when you walk into the land of Israel, the last time you've gone to visit, and the next time you've gone to visit, think about it. You step into the land and you feel like a different person. What just happened? Because you feel you're in a holier place. What does that have to do with you? You should be more embarrassed. Now here you are bringing your impure self. No, because I know that being in this holy place elevates me. So if I can physically create this space, this special space that is holy and pure, a place where no one goes to because it's so reverent, it's so holy, it's so pure, that unless you go in on Yom Kippur by the Kohen Gadol, and do you know what kind of process it took to get the Kohen Gadol to be able to enter on the Holy of Holies? 15 times he has to purify himself. He has to go to the mikveh 5 times throughout the day. He has to wash his hands and feet from the water of the kior another 10 times. He has to prepare himself for 7 days before, sprinkling with the para aduma. He stays up all night and prepares, and for weeks before he's studying. For those few minutes that he enters the Holy of Holies. But this only works because God allowed us to take a place, to take a space, and to instill it, and to infuse it with Kedusha, and purity and holiness. And for God to actually allow that place to become holier and purer than anyone else. And he says, let's actually read. He says, God says, take a place, make it clean and pure. Don't bring your evil thoughts. You can't even walk in with your money bag into this place. It's all cell phones left at the door, especially ones with that need to be left at the door. And that will purify that place and purify the people inside it. And I'll read the next part in English. And God chose this place, maybe because it's the center of the world, which it is, or for some other reason that God knows. And here are 5 lines in the bottom. By purifying our actions in this way, in other words, by making the physical entity holy, which we will have there, we will connect to God on a level we've never connected to. And what we mean is like this. If you want to sit and talk to God, you can do so in your home. But you will never reach the level of connection to God that you can have if you would come to shul and sit and talk to God. Now, it could be that you can't really do this in shul because people will think of you as being strange, and if you're sitting there by yourself, and sometimes it's hard during davening. There's so much talking going on during davening that it's hard to daven, hard to hear yourself think. Maybe some shuls are better than others, but the shul is supposed to be a place where you go there to connect to God. I once saw a sign on the front wall of a shul that said, "My dear fellow Jew, if you come to shul to talk, where do you go to daven?" And we need a physical place like that. There's a custom that many people have when they first move into a home for the first time, that the first act they do is designate a place where if they're praying, this is the place where they will pray. That's the first thing one should do when moving into a new home. Beautiful minhag that many people have. And the reason why that is because if you know that that's the place you're going to pray, that little piece, that corner, will be treated with a little bit more respect. And when you do that, when you have a whole building now, unfortunately, because of the way our society has developed, our synagogues, our shuls, have become multi-purpose facilities. We show movies in shul, we have gatherings and parties in shul and all kinds of things. And you know what? It's better because we do need that. Our society needs. The shul's got to keep up with the times. And we got to have, rabbis have to be entertaining. We get that. And so, that's what we need. But I would say to the person, before we get to sacrifices, I would say to the person who says, what do we need this temple for? I would say, because I'd like at least one space on this planet that hasn't been corrupted by modern society's desire for modernity and advancement into the world of complete liberalism and just permission for everything. Let one spot actually be prohibited from anyone walking into, other than once a year.
I think that's a lovely idea, but it doesn't answer to have one place that's holy, makes sense even to modern man, but not that place is a place where sacrifices.
Oh, I haven't gotten to the sacrifice yet. Yeah. Hopefully we'll have time. If we don't get to it, we'll certainly come back to it. No, but he's going there. He's going there.
Very soon after.
But what we're saying, the first thing is that we need to have some holy space. We need to have a place where we revere and we respect that a place, and we go there whenever we want to detach from the descent that modern society has fallen into. And I'm not saying, I use the word liberal, but I don't mean liberal in the sense we should have all men are created equal and all that, that's great stuff. But not to the point where we just stop having rules and limitations because everyone's entitled to their personal inclination. And I use that word inclination specifically. He says this is why that place, even today, that holy mountain is considered, still considered holy. So I'm going to skip a lot because I want to get to it. On page 3, he says, now let's go to sacrifices. I only got a couple of minutes. Let's try to do this quickly. He says, when a person sins, I'm going to try to read this. Therefore, when a person will sin, we're in the 5th line in that middle paragraph, his heart will never be purified by his words alone. He can talk to the wall and say, I have sinned, I will never sin again. But he doesn't mean it. He doesn't mean it because we don't mean anything we say. We are a people who apologize and give excuses to ourselves, but we're just, our society, are people where words mean nothing. That's the problem. We're in the middle of a time of campaigns. Please tell me who you can think of. I'm not naming any names, but tell me who you can think of in all of the history of the world of a politician who has gotten up and made claims about exactly what they're going to do and actually did it. I could probably name a few that meant it. Right. That meant it. And we're blaming them because they've got greater responsibility, but all of us do this. What we're going to have is a special place where it's not about sacrifices. It's not even about the animals. It's about me realizing that my transgression is so great that I need to take some very serious steps to change myself and to affect myself in this way. So you were mentioning before the explanation of the Ramban that I'm supposed to see the sacrifices as me being sacrificed, and the answer is, as we're saying, modern society, you want to say that it's enough for you to do the prayers? Why do we need this in between? If the whole point of this is to connect to God and prayers can do it, well, tell me, when's the last time you prayed in a way that will affect you this way? Because I guarantee you, you bring a sacrifice and you watch that process and you see them cutting the animal and burning the parts on the altar and the Levium playing the music and the Kohen standing over you and taking your confession. I'm telling you, guarantee you that that's going to affect you in a very serious way. And you will not take the observance of Shabbos or the rules of idol worship. You won't take them lightly anymore. You think that our society has advanced to being more into being able to do things with words and thoughts. I tell you that our society has advanced that nothing means anything to us anymore. So maybe we'll talk about this more in our upcoming classes, but because we're going to be dealing in Sefer Vayikra with this a lot, and I'd like to elaborate on this because I'd like to deal specifically, but what about the killing of the animals and all that stuff? We'll address that. But at least for us to understand the beginning of the answer is that we actually need a lot of help. We as a society have descended, we've fallen from revering anything. We don't respect parents, we don't respect elders, we don't respect leaders, and we've fallen so far that many of our leaders don't deserve respect. What we're davening for is to bring back some pure holiness, to bring back at least a temple, a place where we have some, and you know what? If we would have a holy temple and we would see the inspiring service there, I think our shuls would be different too. I think when people would come to shul, they would come to daven. And if we had real sacrifices that we were bringing, if we had a complicated service, and there's so much involved in the sacrifice. We call them sacrifices, even though the word should be offering, or coming close, as you said before. But it's not because it's not about the animal, and it's not only because, well, this represents you, but it's because we're lying to ourselves and thinking that we've advanced and evolved away from these things. All we've done is escaped and fallen into our own personal desires and to be able to do what we want. It's a free choice society where everyone does, Ish kol hayasher b'einav yaseh, everyone does what they want. And we need to go back to a system where we actually have expectations of reverence of that kind.
But if having the sacrifices would be such a panacea for everything, then the first temple never should have been destroyed. The second temple never should have been destroyed. Those societies should have been completely good and perfect because they had sacrifices. And people should not have fallen to such a degree.
The first temple had sacrifices, but they also had idols. And the idols took those same process of sacrificing and corrupted it. You're right. If it was just sacrifices and they were struggling with morality, the sacrifices would have elevated them. If it was just sacrifices and they were struggling with theft, the sacrifices would have helped elevate them. But when you're struggling with idol worship, where you actually take that same process of sacrificing and corrupt it, And so what about the Second Temple? Second Temple was also, they didn't have idol worship at that time, but they had machlokas. They had disagreement and they had fighting.
Oh, we don't have that today.
Oh, no,
That's the difference.
But the problem is, and the Chafetz Chaim writes, that's why we haven't gone back, because we're not able to fix this. But yeah, if, assuming it wasn't the kind of issue that directly eats away at the system of the sacrifices, then it would elevate us, and the temple wouldn't have been destroyed. So again, I haven't fully gotten to the sacrifice issue. We didn't really get to these 2 pages, which is, so I do owe everyone a debt. Hopefully we'll be able to cover this over the next, but at least that's the beginning of the understanding, is that when we say we've evolved past that, why do we need that? I would say we've decomposed instead of evolving. Yes?
Maybe it would be better to say the potential is there in sacrifices. That it's not a panacea.
Well, I say if people lived at that time and they had this amazing experience, how come they weren't fixed? And
Well, the potential is there, but there's.
well, that's true of everything. But yeah.
That's what I'm.
All right. So, Amir Hashem, to be continued. We'll talk about this one. Thank you.